Turkey is a paradox. It's secular and Islamic, modern and traditional. It wants to be Western, yet looks eastwards. But whatever Turkey is doing, it seems to be working. I'm Mehdi Hassan, and welcome to Istanbul, the economic and cultural heart of this young, thriving country. Modern Turkey was founded in 1923 by Kemal Ataturk. He transformed the old Ottoman Empire into a militantly secular and democratic country, banning the wearing of the fez in the process. But today, some say his legacy is under assault from a politically Islamic and increasingly authoritarian government. Journalists and artists are being imprisoned in their hundreds, and the Prime Minister is waging a campaign against abortion and even birth control. Yet, with one of the fastest growing economies in the world, few people here are complaining. The government is popular at home and abroad. Turkey is now a regional superpower. But is it a model for other countries to try and emulate? And can this seemingly schizophrenic nation bridge two worlds? We're about to find out inside the cafe. Joining us in the cafe today are Nursuna Memecan, a member of Turkey's ruling party, the AKP, and one of the few female members of the Turkish parliament. Mehmet Karli is lecturer at Galatasaray University in Istanbul, a human rights activist and a vocal advocate for the country's Kurdish minority. Andrew Finkel is an American journalist living in Istanbul who's been covering Turkish politics for the past 20 years and is the author of Turkey, What Everyone Needs to Know. Gokce Piskin is a rising star in the CHP, the main opposition party in Turkey, and believes the AKP is eroding the country's liberal and secular heritage. Merve Kavakci Islam is a former member of parliament who was prevented from taking up her seat and had her citizenship revoked due to her wearing of the headscarf. She's an outspoken critic of Turkey's secular policies. And Abdulhamit Bilici is the head of the Cihan News Agency in Istanbul and a columnist for Zaman, the country's biggest-selling Turkish-language newspaper. He's the author of the book, Why Turkey? So thank you very much, all of you, for joining me here in the cafe in Istanbul. I just want to kick off straight away with a question for all of you. And that is, how do you see Turkey's role in the world? Nursuna, you're with the governing AKP party. What do you think?
Turkey is a progressive country. We have been moving on with many reforms in the democratic field and also in the infrastructure of the country. And we are making progress in making our people happier. The income distribution has gotten much fairer, and the resources of the country is shared by the majority of the people now. So we're becoming a more relevant and more important country, not just for our people, but for the region and for Europe, for the rest of the world too.
So a more relevant, more important country, Mehmet, and happy and progressive. Is that a view you share?
I really don't agree with these findings. Basically, she made, I think, three main findings. The first one was with respect to democratization of the country, and she asserted that Turkey has a democratic image abroad. I couldn't disagree anymore. When you look at, indexes, prepared by the Freedom House, Turkey ranks, 120-something in terms of press freedom. When you check the numbers of the International Press Institute, there are something like 102 or 105 journalists who are currently in prison. There are something like 750 students who are currently under detention in Turkey. More than 5,500 members of the main Kurdish party are currently in jail.
We're going to return to some of those issues you raised about detentions and arrests. Merve, how do you see Turkey today?
Let me try to be the mediator in this. Historically speaking, the Western democracies had seen Turkey as a role model because it has combined the Islamic heritage with the secular state edifice for so long. So the West always had this frustration with the Muslim world and wanted the rest of the Muslim world to become like Turkey. But the reality on the ground contradicts with that utopic positioning of Turkey as this country that meets East with the West, Islam with the Western values of democracy.
Andrew, you've spent, I think, more than 20 years here in Istanbul
That's
as an observer. What do you think?
Well, I think it's the fact that it is imperfect, but that's what it symbolizes on the world stage, that it's a country in transition. It's not a
Is
perfect...
there a perfect democracy?
No,
in
of
the
course
world?
there's no
Yeah.
perfect democracy.
There's no such thing.
But I sometimes think the outside world sees Turkey as a sort of viewing platform in the safari of wild nations. Turkey is a sort of safe haven where the outside world comes. They come to Turkey. Turkey is familiar. It's got a lot of sort of Western accoutrements about it. Turkey is a place where the West can come, feel safe, and look around the region and see what's going on. And of course, the reverse is true. People from the region see a lot in Turkey to identify with, look at Turkey's struggle to become more democratic, to become more accepted by Western nations, to play its full role in the world, and they sympathize and empathize with Turkey.
Abdulhamit, Turkey is a place where the West comes to feel safe.
I guess Turkey's position is like Turkish carpet. You know, there are lots of colors on it. So, I mean, depending on your perspective, where you are looking from. So when you look, for instance, from an economic perspective, you could see that Turkey is the number second in terms of highest growth rate, and one of the very good performing economies in Europe and in the region.
Yeah.
So this is very positive that we can never, and no one can deny. But when you look at from democratic perspective, I mean, Turkey is a country which had 5 military interventions in 60 years. So we had not a perfect democracy, and we are not
Ever, even before the
So we are
AKP.
trying to reach a better democracy, not a perfect democracy. But Turkey's dynamism itself is energizing people around the world, and especially in the Middle East. So this is a factor that when you talk people from Tunisia or from Egypt or from Syria, they look Turkey as a good example to emulate, to learn, to inspire.
Gokce, pluses and minuses. When you look at your country's image, reputation, standing in the world, do you see more pluses or more minuses?
Well, there's a balance to that. Turkey is a growing economy with a huge amount of youth population, very dynamic population, but with a very high unemployment rate. So we don't see very much trust in the future. Plus, when you look at Turkey's role in the region, we are acting as a teacher to the region, which is not, I think, not very well understood by the people and not very much welcomed by the people of the Middle East.
So I'm an outsider, and I look at Turkey, and I see a country that aspires to be a regional superpower. Am I right, Andrew?
I don't think so, no. It certainly aspires to take its place in the concourse of nation. It clearly sees itself as a major economy in the region. I mean, Turkey, the thing about Turkey is that it's a big economy. It's a big industrial economy. It's a big service economy. Turkey has an interest in the stability and prosperity of its neighbors, and that really, in a sense, puts Turkey on the side of the angels because it is a peace party. It has no benefit from conflict in its region. Because if there's peace, then it sells more widgets. It's very obvious. So, Turkey wants the neighborhood to get along. So that's a good thing, but that's a long jump from becoming a superpower.
There was this line that the foreign minister, Mr. Davutoglu, came up with about zero problems with neighbours. It became a kind of defining Turkey's foreign policy. And yet you look around the neighbourhood now and you seem to have problems with all your neighbours. Israel, Syria, you participated belatedly in the Libyan intervention. How did you go from zero problems to so many problems?
Zero problems is a policy. It was a principle, is a still legitimate principle. The idea behind zero problems policy was that we suffered from our problems with our neighbors. So we decided to take a different stance and to sort out our problems with our neighbors. So there's substance behind zero problems policy also, that we wanted to talk to our neighbors, visit our neighbors, and we invited our neighbors to our country. So this dialogue is an essential part of zero problems policy. And then we supported this with economic interdependence with our neighbors. So there was this change in the Middle East. So we didn't invent the change. But there was a change. So we're now dealing with the change still with the zero problems policy with our neighbors.
In the eyes of the West, it's as if you've turned your back, some would say. I mean, Merve, do you hear
Position-
Americans saying to you, for example, that you've turned your back on us, you've betrayed us, you're going Eastern?
Well, Turkey's role modelness has been inculcated on Turkey, imposed on Turkey for long by the Western democracies. Turkey has never assumed that it was a model country for the rest of the countries in the region, per se. But
Even
this
now?
also
Even
no,
now, does it
but
not think-
now things have changed. Erdogan's government, Erdogan per se as a leader, is perceived as a model by the people in the region who have been disenfranchised for so long, which might have a different opinion actually about Erdogan vis-a-vis their government.
Mehmet, you wanted to come in. Prime Minister Erdogan, is he running what some people call a neo-Ottoman foreign policy?
They certainly, of course, if you ask a question to them, they would certainly tell you, oh no, certainly not, because they shun away from the word Neo-Ottoman. But when you look at their attitude, you can easily see that they've got this condescending language, they pursue this hubristic policy, and indeed, in one of the parliamentary sessions, our Minister of Foreign Affairs, he said clearly that there's a new Middle East coming on, and we want to shape it. I mean, this is an imperialist language, even if they don't want to accept it.
Talk about imperial language. I saw Abdulhamit raise an eyebrow there. Do you disagree?
I don't think that Turkey has imperial ambitions, but there is a kind of self-realization. Turkey neglected itself, its potential for so long time. Now, I mean, there was very inertia in terms of Turkish foreign policy, for instance, for years, for decades. And now Turkey is looking for a new role for itself and trying to discover its own identity. But this is not an easy thing. Of course, I mean, these politicians can make sometimes assessments or statements that are overreaching consequences or results.
Abdulhamit, can I put one of those statements to you? I mean, one that's often quoted in the West. In 2009, Foreign Minister Davutoglu gave a speech where he said, the Balkans, the Caucasus, the Middle East were all better off when under Ottoman control or influence. Now Turkey is back, ready to lead. How should we interpret such comments?
I guess, as I said, there has been some misstatements, maybe with good intentions. But, I mean, Turkey now is indeed making a reality check. After making such huge statements in Syria, we learned that Turkey alone cannot rule the world, cannot make big changes. So Turkey needs allies and friends from Arab nations, from the Western nations. So Turkey is making a reality check. But for the Ottoman past, it doesn't mean that we can repeat the experience. But we can learn from some positive aspects of it. That's what I see.
And Turkey doesn't want to rule any of these nations or peoples. We're part of Europe, we're part of the Turkic world, we're part of the Islamic world, we're part of the Middle East, we're part of Caucasus, the Black Sea, Mediterranean. So we have many memberships.
Is it still a core member of the Western Alliance, do you think?
Of course.
NATO?
I mean, of course. We are...
Member.
We are the founding members of many European institutions.
Gokce, what's wrong with that?
Well, the thing is, there's a dilemma, I think, because when you talk about imperialism, you see a country imposing some things on the others or interfering on others' internal issues, political issues, in the name of economic gain. So for me, that's imperialism. So we can see many aspects of imperialism in AKP's governing style today. Very aggressive in international politics.
You said it's aggressive. Do you not think the Prime Minister should have encouraged the Arab revolutions as he did, for example, in Egypt, where he's now a hero, when he called on Hosni Mubarak to stand down? Was that a mistake?
No. It's not that. The thing is, when we get back to the zero problem policy, we haven't developed a sustainable model. And I think that was the problem in always shifting. Of course, if there's a change, we have to follow the change and support democracy. However, in the first place, we have a lot of democratic problems. And imposing Turkey as a role model in Turkey and the government accepting this model today is, I think, it's not sincere. Supporting the revolutions, it's, I think, very important, but it's not a sincere action of the government.
It did
I
appear to
believe.
be opportunistic. I think
It's
that's
very
right.
opportunistic.
The
That's
case in Libya,
the
the case in Libya
Yeah.
was so clear. Our
Which
Prime
foreign
Minister-
countries weren't
Of
opportunistic
course,
in the Arab
Exactly.
Spring?
Turkey is not unique, but the problem that Turkey faced, I think, was at the end of the Cold War. I mean, Turkey is not an economy that has a single commodity like oil or natural gas. Turkey's commodities, Turkey's curse, as it were, was its strategic significance to its NATO allies. NATO allies looked at Turkey, they turned a blind eye to Turkey because they needed a stable Turkey to guard NATO's flank, southern flank. Now, of course, with the end of the Cold War, Turkey suddenly lost that commodity, so it had to redefine itself. Now, there's a great deal of populism in the way that it tries to do this.
Is foreign policy popular
I mean,
here?
if you say that, if you hint that you're regaining this imperial strength, that the rest of the world region loves you because they admire the values and the culture that you stand for, of course there's a populist element in this. Now, but of course it's all gone wrong. I mean, the populist element led to this great opening with Syria, but now Syria and Turkey are at loggerheads. Iraq and Syria are at loggerheads. And because Iraq and Syria are at loggerheads, Turkey and Iran are at loggerheads. So, I think we have to listen to, it was the British Prime Minister Harold Macmillan who said it best, when asked what would derail his policies, he turned around and he said, events, dear boy, events. And I think events have derailed Turkish foreign policy.
Just on the specific point Andrew raises, I mean, for decades, NATO saw Turkey as a very important member. Turkey was there to protect the flank, to use Andrew's phrase. A lot of people, both inside and outside Turkey, I hear, praise the AKP government for actually trying to form an independent foreign policy, not be wholly subservient to the West or the United States. Isn't that something to be proud of?
Of course, I think the problem with the AKP's foreign policy is that there is a huge discrepancy between what they say and what they do. They pretend to have an independent foreign policy. They pretend to play the mediating role between Iran and the rest of the world, and then they decide to locate the missile defense system in Turkey. They try to adopt a moralistic language. They say they're acting in the name of some values. If you use this language, you have to live up to that. If you do not live up to this language, and if your acts contradict this language, you must be open to criticism as well.
I agree with Mehmet. We're talking about an entrenched legacy of foreign policy that was built over time for the past 80-some years, based on Turkish sort of role as a protector of State of Israel militarily. This has been what made Turkey, in a way, untouchable, immune to some of the other problems in democratization. It takes time to change foreign policy.
One thing that has noticeably changed, and you mentioned it, is Israel. I mean, Nursuna, you talk about zero problems. It seems like Prime Minister Erdogan wants lots of problems with Israel. I mean, he famously walked out and became a hero to many Palestinians in 2009 when he walked out of the Davos summit with President Peres of Israel. He's recently called for the lifting of the siege, an apology for the killing of the Turkish citizens on the flotilla. What is the relationship between Israel and Turkey like right now? How would you describe the relationship between Turkey and this very former important ally?
I believe that Israel can be an asset for the region, but Israel doesn't act like one. Israel has been acting like a bully in the region, and so it has a kind of immunity from for all its actions also. So we place a significant importance to our relationships with Israel. Turkey is the first Islamic country that has recognized the State of Israel. And we have built a good relationship with Israel.
So is this an example of your rhetoric and reality mismatch?
I think, I think it has become, just very clear by now that I'm not a big fan of the AKP government.
Oh, I hadn't noticed.
Yeah, but let me put it very clearly. The policy that they pursue vis-a-vis Israel. Okay, we may not agree with its tone, we may not agree with the words that they use, but when it comes to the Palestinian cause, there is a national consensus in Turkey. I mean, it is one of the very few issues that there is a high degree of national consensus. We side with the Palestinian cause. We want a free independent Palestinian state, and we want an end to the plight of all those refugees as well.
Gokce, do you approve of the government's handling of the Israel-Palestine issue, if no other issue?
I mean, the government made use of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict as a populist issue to gain votes in Turkey, because in terms of diplomatic relations, it might seem like, I'm very against you, but at the same time, I mean,
behind the scenes, they're much closer.
Behind the scenes, we are making a lot of deals, and our trade is increasing, and our partnership is getting stronger. I think the region deserves sincerity, and sincerity is the way to solve problems in the region, especially in the conflicts.
Abdulhamit, you wanted to come in.
If Turkey has normal relations with Israel, that would help to settle the crisis in the Palestinian case, in the Israeli case. But in general, I mean, there is no doubt that the Turkish public is pro-Palestine, and Turkish people are, feeling very close to their problem.
But the bridge phrase is used much more widely between the West and the East, between the Arab world and Europe. I mean, do you see Turkey's role as being that bridge between East and West?
I mean, when you look at the geography of Turkey, it looks like a bridge anyway between East and West. I mean, so we want to improve our relationships with our neighbors, and we want to be a strong nation with strong trade connections to our partners in the region and partners in the world.
Well, one of the reasons that people are looking up to Turkey and Turkey is able to expand is, of course, its economic strength. I mean, over the last few years, whether you're pro or anti-AKP, the fact is the numbers speak for themselves. Astonishing growth rates. I think second fastest growth rate in the world last year.
After China, yes.
After China. I mean, what do you ascribe, apart from your own government's competence, what do you ascribe Turkey's so-called economic miracle to?
Yeah, actually, I have to say that it's my government's competence. We have suffered from many economic and financial crises in our past history, but we learned, our government has learned from the past experiences, and we put a strict financial discipline in our financial structure.
Gokce, it must be difficult being in opposition against a government that's presiding over 8-9% growth rates.
They're enjoying this too, so they should not be.
You're enjoying the fruits of that
everyone
growth.
is. Our per capita income has moved from $3,000 to $10,000 plus.
More than tripled.
We have to put what happened in Turkey between 2003 and 2010 into its global context. The world was growing at an unprecedented rate. The developing countries grew at an unprecedented rate. Turkey served on this wave. I'm not saying that AKP did nothing. I'm saying that they served
you seem
on
to be
the
saying
wave.
something special.
It is not a miracle.
Here's a question. Is this a moment? Something we didn't talk about earlier is the European Union. Turkish membership of the EU has been the holy grail for politicians here for so many years. Is this the moment for Turkey to go back to the EU and say, you guys are in trouble, we're doing well, let us in now? You're doing that?
Yeah,
That's the strategy?
European Union is in trouble financially, and also as a union, I see that they're in trouble. They have to be more realistic about their issues. I don't think they are realistic about their issues, and I don't know if I'm not sure if they're aware of where they're heading to disintegration or to more unification of the European countries.
But you still want to be part of it? That hasn't changed?
Yeah, we still want to be.
Despite all the financial problems?
No, we want the European Union to be strong, and we know that we will contribute to the strength of European Union, and we're working hard to be part of that strong European Union.
Well, on that note, let's take a break. We're going to be back in part 2 to talk about democracy, human rights, and the thorny issue of abortion, which seems to be dominating discussions here in Istanbul these days. Welcome back to the cafe here in Istanbul. We're talking about Turkey, politics, economics, human rights. I just want to kick off this half of the programme with a question to all of you again, which is, how democratic is Turkey? On a scale of 1 to 10, what score would you give Turkey? Gokce, you're with the opposition. How democratic is this country?
Well, to give a number, no. I can say a 4, and there are 5 steps to the reason why I say a 4.
A 4 out of 10, okay.
Exactly.
Not great, we'll come to you soon.
In 2001, we had an economic crisis, and then for the first time we have swallowed the IMF bill. After that, we have developed economic interdependencies with our neighbors and with a lot of major countries in the Middle East. We needed foreign investment because Turkey is an energy-dependent country. And in terms of high-tech economics, we are dependent on Europe and the West, which is...
But how does that affect the democratic credentials of the country?
That's where I want to come to. We needed stability to accomplish all those economic, financial steps, one by one. And in Turkey, that stability went on to authoritarianism, unfortunately.
Okay, let's get some more scores. Abdulhamit, how democratic is Turkey on a scale of 1 to 10?
I would say 6.5.
6.5, very exact.
Of course, this is just a joke. I think it depends on your perspective. I suggest those who are following Turkey to look at developments in a comparative perspective. Because if you forget forest and focus on tree, you lose the picture, the bigger picture. So in comparative terms, Turkey is better. So, now in terms of military-civilian relations, in terms of being people prosecuted for their attempts to make coup against the democratically elected government. So in terms of government or the state having a Kurdish TV broadcasted. So these are important steps, positive steps. Okay. But in terms of others, of course, when we compare with Norway, with Germany, we have lots of way to go.
It's not a fair comparison, is it? A bit more positive. Andrew?
6.4.7, I would have thought. The serious answers to this question, not to take up Abdulhamit's words out of his mouth, but the serious answer is that Turkey basically is authoritarian, but it is inherited an authoritarian structure. It's inherited a constitution, a 1982 constitution, which was penned by the military under a period of martial law. Now, this constitution basically allows Turkish citizens to do anything, to say anything, to be anything, except in every example in which the government doesn't want them to be. So it's a yes-but constitution, and everyone knows that constitution has to go. That constitution has to change. It's a suit of clothes.
But until it does, it's a 6.5.
Now, the real problem, and what I would say is the crux of the democratic dilemma in Turkey, is that here you have this authoritarian constitution, which was penned by the military on the assumption that they would eternally be the masters of that constitution.
Yes, Andrew is right. Turkey is coming from an authoritarian legacy. Kemalist regime has been authoritarian. The modernization project, namely the westernization project, has been imposed on people from the top to bottom, starting off in 1920s. It has a background of 200 years of sort of modernization, but it's a staunch modernization based on sort of a very strict model of laïcité, secularization of the society, privatization of Islam, and creating a divide between the...
Before 1923.
Indeed. That's what I was saying.
So it has times.
Actually, we can go back to like 200 years of debate.
We can go back to Suleiman the Magnificent, I'm sure.
Not that fast.
My question is it more democratic today than when you look back?
Relatively speaking, picking on what Mr. Bilici has said, indeed, it is much more democratic. I'll rank it 5.9, going on to 6, with some optimism. There are huge issues of human rights violations.
And I'm sure Mehmet's going to tell us about it.
Yeah, if we have to just give it, if you got to give a score, I would say 4 going down.
4 going
with
down.
A negative forecast. Why? From 2002, when AKP came to government, to 2011, the prison population in Turkey doubled. From 2002 to 2011, the number of police officers doubled. Over the same period, only the increase with respect to teachers was 24%. This is a clear policy choice. You recruit more police, you don't increase the number of teachers to the same amount. More importantly, when it comes to so-called terror-related crimes, most of the terror-related crimes, they do relate to political affairs in Turkey and mostly to the Kurdish issue. From 2005 to 2011, the number of those who were under detention with respect to or in relation with terror-related crimes has tripled. You refer to the Kurdish television channel. There are not many Kurds left out there who could watch it. They're all in jail, and you can't watch the Kurdish television in jail. Of course, I'm exaggerating by saying they're all in jail, but when it comes to Kurdish party, Mehdi, there are something like 5,500 of the members of the party who are currently in jail. that means effectively the party is closed down.
This is the Kurdish party,
This
the
is the
BDP,
Kurdish party, the
the
BDP.
Peace and Democracy
What the AKP does is that they have developed their technology of oppression. They are very good at PR. They do not close down the party. This is what Turkey used to do back in the past. They do it much more insidiously. They, detain those who are members of the party, and when it comes to the foreigners, they can say, "Oh, look, the party is out there."
Let's bring in AKP. Nursuna is here, our AKP
Then people
member
were
of
being
Parliament.
tortured.
Score of 4 going downwards. What do you respond to Mehmet's points?
Democracy is an ongoing process. There is no perfect democracy, and there cannot be any perfect democracy because everything is changing and you have to adapt yourself to new changes with the democratic principles in mind. And we have democratic principles in mind. We are now moving with the people. There is much more participation and engagement.
You have a prime minister who knows better than anyone else what's good for the prime.
Can criticize him.
I mean, he says
Excuse me?
abolish abortion, no abortion. He says build
No,
a third
it
Bosphorus
doesn't
bridge.
happen
There's
like
a third
that.
Bosphorus bridge.
You know, it does. Excuse me,
We'll
may
come
I-
to the Prime Minister in a moment. We'll come to the Prime Minister.
Yeah.
You say democracy is at work in agreed.
Yeah,
But one of the basic tenets of a democracy surely is a free press. Turkey has more journalists in prison than
free and-
Iran and China combined.
First of all, free and fair elections is the first thing for a democracy. And we have
And you've won
free
elections,
and
definitely.
fair elections. And we are, in 3 consecutive elections, we have the majority, we have
Agreed.
the approval of
What
the
about the-
majority
what about
of
the
the
media?
people.
The way the government controls the press is not by imprisoning journalists, it's through media ownership. It puts pressures on media owners that it doesn't like, and it supports media owners that it does like. So, for example, one of the main pro-government parties, pro-government newspapers, the Prime Minister's own son-in-law is on the board. It was financed through a
Let's
state
put
bank.
this in a context that the international audience can understand. Freedom of expression is a challenge in democratization process of Turkey. The very prime minister of this country spent jail time when he was the mayor of
reading out a
Istanbul
poem.
for reading a poem from a public school book, because the generals thought that was a threat to the secular state at this. So we need to put it into a perspective. Turkey is democratizing. It is not perfect. It is not where we want to see it. But this is not just the problem of the AKP government.
But isn't it ironic that he's now Prime Minister and people are being locked up for, I think there were 2 students who were locked up recently for unfurling a banner asking for free education.
Absolutely.
Turkey's top
Absolutely.
pianist has just been put
No
on trial
one
for
should be-
tweeting
Absol-
jokes about Islam.
Not jokes, a poem. Again, a
Omar
poem from
Khayyam
Omar
poem.
Khayyam.
So isn't
he
it ironic?
retweeted a poem from Omar Khayyam.
So they are being prosecuted for what they think and say.
There are many areas for improvement, and the government is working on expanding the area of freedom of speech. Again, as Abdulhamit had said, our constitution was written in 1980s by the military, and so there are many restrictions, and we have had a referendum. We made amendments to the constitution. Now we're in the rewriting phase of the constitution.
All this exclusive constitution, the constitution has been amended 17 times since 1983,
Yeah, but there's a
and
militaristic-
substantially. And
So you're saying they could make change if they wanted to,
AKP
is it?
had the
Exactly,
power
any
to
government
change.
can
They
change.
did not amend all the undemocratic provisions. They had the power to amend them only by themselves. They didn't choose to do that.
We've talked about freedom of speech.
It wasn't easy to change.
I'm here in Istanbul.
To the constitution.
How long are we going to wait? I mean, 12 more
even
years?
those democratic
Okay, well, let me-
amendments did not
Abdulhamit,
have
very
support
briefly,
from
go.
the
Yeah,
opposition.
I would say just 2010 there was a mini package of constitutional
Yes,
changes.
and a referendum.
So in that there was an improvement in terms of Turkey's human rights standards, rule of law, etc. But
then Turkey's standards dropped since 2010 in the Reporters Without Borders Index.
Look at the position of the opposition to that. They said no.
No,
It was a change, but they did not support first.
I have a serious objection.
This is
First,
misleading.
serious,
But
misleading.
first,
This one is
second
misleading, Abdulhamit.
For me, on the performance of the ruling party, I like the former AK party.
The former AK party.
Yes,
okay.
The ones first elected.
which was more reformist.
First term.
First term, and until 2005 and 6, Turkish government, this government was much more successful, much more speedy in terms of reform.
What happened? Do you think the
So
Prime
that-
Minister
I mean,
got
they
carried
have to
away?
comment
They gave up on European Union membership. That's
Was
what
it
happened.
only pressure from the EU that was helping drive
This
reform
was one
into
of the
it?
factors.
No.
This was-
Let's raise an issue that seems to have been dominating the headlines since I've arrived in Istanbul, and that is the abortion issue. The Prime Minister has come out and attacked not just abortion, birth control, C-sections. I'm the product of a C-section. What's wrong with C-sections?
Oh, no, there's a big problem with C-section.
This is an international conspiracy.
The Prime Minister has seen the figures with C-section and with the abortions. And there's a huge rise in the number of C-sections. The doctors are voluntarily
47% in comparison to 22%
in the state hospitals
in
and
international
90%
arena.
in private
So
hospitals.
let's deal with the
That
abortion
That's,
issue.
there's a
No, I'm not talking about
he wanted to bring this to the attention of the people or the women and everybody else that abortion is not a good thing for any women. I mean, I can't
But
say
it's legal in
not-
Turkey right now, just to be clear.
it's-
Up to
yeah,
10
I mean,
weeks.
there are
wants
there are
abortion.
some.
Who would want
There was no
abortion?
such debate in
No one
Turkey.
would
Yeah,
want
there
abortion.
He brought it up to
I know,
change the
but-
agenda.
No.
Why change the agenda?
So this is one of the issues.
The context of this reform, just
Please.
to explain, was that basically Turkey is demanding an apology from Israel for 9 deaths on this boat. But Turkish planes themselves killed 34 Kurdish villagers
Uludere.
in a place called Uludere. Many of them were kids. The youngest was 12. Basically, people are saying, well, if you want an apology for Israel
And he
killing,
compared-
you should apologize for the 34 deaths. The Prime Minister, in a very strange sort of comparison, compared the deaths in Uludere to the deaths of aborted children, and even to women who have C-sections and therefore somehow inadvertently reduce their fertility by having C-sections.
Why do you think he did that? Just do you agree with it as a change of agenda?
I think it was a sort of reflex action to try and defer the debate.
Gokce, is this a liberty issue? Is this another example, in your view, of the government or not?
As a young woman,
Well-
it is a liberty issue. I mean, it is for us to decide for ourselves. We haven't been asked, we haven't talked about it. Plus, there is a change in the agenda. We are talking about the monopolization of the media ownership in Turkey. So when there was the debates going on about Uludere massacre, when there is talks going on about the workers' right to strike, airways workers' right to strike in Turkey, then we came up with the debates of abortion.
Do you think the Prime Minister has the support of the country on this?
Has
In
what?
a Muslim country like Turkey, a Muslim majority state, does he have the support of the public on this, on changing the abortion laws?
I think it's too early to call right now. But abortion issue has various items on it. Health is an issue. Religion is another matter in this. Definitely the numbers on C-section override the general numbers that run in the international arena. But I definitely disagree with Gokce. This is not a women's body issue. This is a human rights issue. It involves the mother, it involves the father, but more importantly, it
So you
involves
think
the
it was
unborn
legitimate?
baby.
So it was legitimate for the Prime Minister to bring this up in the way he did?
The way he did, I'm not sure.
To liken abortion to
Oh,
Turkish
Abortion
jets
to a
bombing
massacre. This is
villages.
what he
I'm
said.
not sure.
He
I
said-
have reservations on that.
There had never been a proper public debate on abortion in this country. There is no such demand, there is no such proposal, neither in government's plan program, nor in the party program.
Abdulhamit, please.
It is great that we're not talking about Uludere.
What I would say, the abortion was not an issue in Turkey. Let's be sure, first.
But until we saw
Hold on, let
the
Abdulhamit finish.
Second, abortion is a political issue, as it is very understandable from the American perspective that it is one of the controversial
Example
issues.
of the culture wars in the United States.
It's very
as well.
difficult for left-wing parties and right-wing parties to agree on a standard. So this is very political. So it is very legitimate for any politician to raise, but the way and the style it was raised, we can debate about it.
Earlier, Nursuna said that the AKP has made huge progress on the front of women's rights and women's rights. Do you agree? Relatively speaking, do you agree with that? Do you acknowledge that they have made progress on the women's rights, or do you worry the opposite?
There's a distinction of women's rights. Which part of woman? That's not just in terms of women issue, but in a lot of the issues. Whose rights are being protected is the issue. Some are, some aren't. Because even in the draft amendments, they're talking about like married women, unmarried women who are living, for instance, with a
Partner.
with a partner are not being covered in terms of protection in the amendments, so that
So
we
it's
can see
selective, is what
clear.
you're saying.
It's very selective. There are clear distinctions.
I mean, there has been a raft of progressive legislation that this government has passed, which has been in favor of women, certainly protecting their issues of marital rape, things like that. So there has domestic violence. There has been a great deal of legislative progress. There is an attitude, however, which is not simply this government, but is part of a patriarchal society, which basically refuses to see women outside the context of the family.
It is so-called sort of backward Islamically inclined AKP who has changed all of that.
Here's-
who wants to
Kemalist
Well, on that
regime.
subject,
Who wants to
to you,
revert?
Merve, let me ask you.
sure.
You're someone who, when you were elected to Parliament in, I think, 1999, you were banned from taking up your seat in Parliament. You had your citizenship revoked because you wear a headscarf. For you as a woman, I'm assuming that's a human rights issue for you.
Indeed, it was.
What has this
It was-
government? What has this government done to help you on that specific issue?
It is a human rights issue. It is a women's rights issue. It is an election issue. Free elections was tempered by the so-called Democratic Leftist Party, which is somewhat of the CHP right now. I took my case to the European Court of Human Rights, and Turkey was convicted for preventing
So what
free
has this
elections.
new government,
This government has not
Islamic-
done much for me. It hasn't done. Actually, the leaders
It
of
hasn't
this
done enough,
government,
you're saying?
yeah, they haven't done anything for me.
Why hasn't the AKP government changed the rules on the headscarf? I'll
When
come
we
to you in a
tried
moment,
to
Abdulhamit.
change the rules about the headscarves or the needs of the conservative
Hold on a minute.
people, our party was almost closed down in 2007. We had a court case.
Abdulhamit, you want to add in?
Because in 2008, it was in 2008, after AK Party got 47% of the support by the people, they attempted with a contribution, with the cooperation of the opposition, one of the opposition parties, and 411 MPs voted to make some reforms on the headscarf issue, especially in the educational field.
Yeah.
But what was the result? The main opposition party brought that to the Constitutional Court, and at that time, Constitutional Court annulled, cancelled that change. Despite
the
the
same Constitutional Court up to them.
no, the Constitutional
No,
Court
it has
changed.
But they don't
Okay,
take the step.
Merve, let's
No,
come back
I mean,
to
they
the,
should
Merve,
be
hold on
out
one
because
second.
it's
Let's
the
come back to the
presumption of innocence.
let's come back to the headscarf issue. So you're saying on the one half that headscarf wearers are being disenfranchised. Others are saying, well, I'm worried about this proposal for women-only pink buses in Istanbul, which I believe is a proposal here. Others are worried about restrictions on alcohol sales that are being suggested in some provinces. Which is it? Is there a creeping Islamization, or are people in headscarves being discriminated against, or is it both?
There's no re-Islamization. I don't see that.
There's no creep. Do we all agree there's no creeping Islamization?
But may I?
There's a growing conservatism in Turkey, and there are several evidence to changing lifestyle and imposing something top down to people.
I will have to
Abortion issue is one thing. Abortion issue is one thing. Changing the educational system. In Turkey today, full-time state schools, which are free schools, free education schools, are being changed to Imam Hatibs, which is a clear evidence
And
that...
Imam, what is it, Imam Hatib? Explain to everyone what it
No, it's not
Hold on. What is
It
it,
is
Imam
a
Hatib?
fallacy. Imam Hatib is a school,
we have one discussion?
is a technical high school, middle school that raises imams, for serve, and they also teach all the
You're saying
rest of the.
that is now predominating.
We have to see that the full-time state schools are being changed to Imam Hatibs to force people whose parents are working full-time and who have no money to send their children to private schools are being forced to send their children to Imam
Let
Hatibs.
Merve come back.
I have
Merve.
no idea where she's coming from with this. I have no idea. The society is a
most recent
conservative
education reform.
society.
Exactly.
It is a 99% Muslim society where religion has been privatized, ostracized by the state authority, as well as religion has been utilized for the state affairs.
Abdulhamit, are we sitting in a country where society is more polarized around religious lines?
I guess Turkish society is not coming from Mars. The conservative section of the society was existing also. But what changed? They started to be in the power game. Now, for instance, we had first time a president having a wife with a headscarf lady.
What did
So that-
CHP do about that?
but you see, but that
Remember
doesn't
the
mean-
marches?
With respect to all human rights violations, then I mean, in this case, I mean, you
please,
always forgot
please,
about
finish
AKP
up.
and
But
the
you see,
blame and
that
opposition.
doesn't-
Let
Doesn't
Abdulhamit
make
finish his
sense.
point.
That doesn't mean that Turkish society was like Switzerland and turned into Iran.
Has Turkey become more polarised, if not on religious lines, then sectarian?
Up until now, perhaps it's been polarized around this secular, anti-secular debate or religious debate. But I think really what's beginning to, I think Turkey perhaps is becoming mature, and if we're hopeful, I think this is a reason to be hopeful, is that Turkey is beginning to polarize around the defense of individual liberties. And so when the prime minister comes out and says women shouldn't have abortions, Islamic women themselves are saying, mind your own business. You know, it's none of your business. Let us decide whether we want to have abortions or not. We don't want to have abortions, but we don't want to decide for other people.
Okay, well, let me pose a question to you. Let me pose a question which I'm going to pose to all of you to finish this discussion. It's got two parts, and I'll ask for a brief answer from all of you. Has Turkey changed more in the last, say, 10 years of AKP rule than it did in the previous 80 years? And is that a good thing or a bad thing?
No, I wouldn't say that it has changed more than the previous 8 years, but the change during AKP government was against individual rights. The
Okay.
main line of division
I'm gonna
is
have to cut
between
you. I
those
want to bring
who define-
everyone in. Nursuna, has it changed more in the past decade
Yeah,
than the
it
previous 80?
has changed, and now more people, ordinary people, are participating in the society, in the business world, and they have more power. People have more power now with the
Merve.
AKP government.
It has changed for the better. The divide is between the cream of the society, the ones who want to preserve the status quo in their ivory
Kurds and
coast,
Alevis,
and the
de la
rest.
crème. The Kurds and Alevis, those who have
Gokce.
been enfranchised for
Hold on,
centuries.
Mehmet.
CHP
Gokce.
hasn't done much
being
for the
oppressed by
Kurds for the
AKP.
past
Hold on,
10
Mehmet. You
years.
said you let
For the
Gokce say her
AKP.
piece.
To put in a better way, there was a change in elitism, but the hands of elitism changed. There's a new elitism of a group, certain group right now. So what is the change? I mean, some group replacing another. When it comes to military power, and when we're all discussing about the military authority in Turkey, what changed today? There's a civil authoritarianism. So there's still
Okay.
authoritarianism, but the
Abdulhamit.
means
But
of
police.
means
Hold on,
changed. Exactly.
Abdulhamit.
I would say that Turkey, until early years of that decade, was a very terrible country because even the existence of Kurds were not accepted. But now they are broadcasting in their language. So this is a very, I mean,
They are
revolution.
not. The state is broadcasting.
But
They
this
are
is
not.
this is revolutionary change and something positive. But I mean, did we finish all things? No. I mean, so all these debates should
Ongoing.
continue, and
Andrew,
we need
has it
lots of
changed
things.
more in the past decade than in the previous 80?
Well, it's changed a lot, but in 2002 it got on this economic treadmill. It has this very naive model of economic growth, and if you ask me why I'm hopeful about Turkey, it's because people like us are shouting at each other and there's a democratic discussion, even through an imperfect medium. But if you ask me where I'm anxious, it's that there is no respect for the future generations. This is a government with no environmental consciousness whatsoever, which dams every single river it finds, builds bridges and houses and every bit of green space it finds. And this is what children will curse this government for, not because they didn't allow women to wear headscarves.
Well, I think we're going to have to leave the discussion there. Thank you very much to you all for joining me here in the cafe. This discussion will continue online. You can contribute on our website, and you can join me again next week here in the cafe.